Welcome everybody. Welcome back to not the stream this time, but this is the podcast for the late breakers. I believe this should be episode number 1 of the podcast. We are just post a Monza race. That is, yeah, Monza race concluded. It's been a bit of a week. Things have been settled down, and we've got our thoughts put together. Today, you're with me, Rito, Tebow, otherwise known as well as we've got Nash with me today. How are you doing, Nash?
I'm doing sensationally. A little depressed that there's no race this weekend, but we move. At least there's Singapore next weekend.
Yeah, it's absolutely phenomenal. I know Singapore's. It's crazy. Singapore's gonna be an exciting one, very very exciting one. Especially we've got quite a few rookies who have never raced on the track before. So
And Singapore is one of those baptisms by fire. It is hot, it is fast, and it's a little bit technical for a lot of those drivers that have never driven there before.
no, I have to agree. It does get extremely technical. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some safety cars, some red flags coming out of.
Well,
of
with Logan Sargent on track, we can expect that to potentially be the case.
No, that's definitely true. But before we get even to talking about Singapore, which is only next week,
Indeed.
lovely night race there. Let's go on to our thoughts about the last race, Monza. Any thoughts of yourself? What do you like, dislike? Let's hear.
Well, this year, let's just be honest, we were surprised that Ferrari were able to put it on podium. Carlos Sainz has been absolutely sensational through the back half of this season, so it's been rather impressive from him. And I think it shows the one lap capability of Ferrari. The unfortunate reality is that they don't seem to have the same race pace. They did fall back rather consistently, and I think, unfortunately, Ferrari's strategy didn't help them too well, as it never seems to, because they almost were at risk towards the end of the race, specifically with Carlos Sainz. He should definitely have been the guy to get the podium, but there were a couple points there that didn't seem like Ferrari's strategy were going to work out for them.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think Ferrari, if we're going across for them, or starting on Ferrari, I think tire wear. Time and time again, we just show how vulnerable the car is to just the extreme tire wear. We could see, especially with Carlos. Carlos was pushing the car extremely hard and wore out those rears. I wouldn't say extremely fast because Leclerc's rears went first before Carlos did, but still, I the tire wear was extremely disappointing. But they put up a extremely good fight against Sergio Perez. I think,
That I would definitely agree with.
yeah, I think if Charles was just faster, I think Carlos could have secured that P2. Um, it could have been a very very interesting fight because we saw so many mess ups from Sergio, Carlos. I honestly think Charles should have been in that fight, and I mean they were slowing each other down. The Mercedes, I think it was George Russell, was very close to catching them. I mean it's still 7 seconds, but he was there. He was showing his face slowly and slowly.
Indeed, he was. I
So
think the reality is.
yeah,
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, carry on.
Okay, so the reality is that Ferrari have had issues with their tire degradation for the past 3 years or so, and it seems as though they're not able to address it or get on top of it, which is, I mean, that's really interesting. There are rumors that Ferrari are going a different direction for next year's car, and that will be interesting. So I don't know. I don't know. Ferrari is a bit of a wonder to me because you've got Charles Leclerc, who over one lap can be one of the quickest drivers on track, but the reality is he's not a closer. I wouldn't consider him a closer because if you look at his record, he's got 17 poles and only 5 wins. And that's, I mean, that conversion rate isn't great, but it also means that Ferrari has consistently been able to build a car that's able to go quick over one lap, but in a race can't seem to put it together.
Yeah, I have to agree. We will have to see. I think Ferrari's capabilities and at their current hand is just insufficient to be fighting. The fact that they've gotten this far is, I think, purely on the capabilities of their drivers. I mean, they've shown us that they can create a competitive car, but in terms of upgrading it and sustaining its pace, with the current team that they've got, there is I feel like it's lacking in that sustainability factor. I mean, we saw it in the same pace with Aston Martin. You know, they they were strong at the start of the year, but now mid-season come, they're not fighting for those podiums anymore. You know, it was looking, it yeah, it's looking like they're just failing ever so slightly to find their footing at where they belong. It's almost like they don't have a true direction to say, are we going to be focused on the front end? Are we more focused on the rear? What are we trying to accomplish or even do?
Yeah, well, the thing is that they did bring some upgrades, and it has improved the car. They look a little bit more competitive, but yet they're still slower than the Mercedes now. McLaren's a contender now for those same positions that Aston Martin were fighting for. So now they are now in heavy competition with other teams and other drivers, specifically Alonso, in competition with other drivers for those higher podium or higher points paying positions. The reality is that they don't have a second driver that's going to be able to bring that, because yes, Lance Stroll's not terrible. I can't say that he absolutely doesn't deserve to be in F1. He's a good driver. He's shown some flashes of ability, but the lack of consistency is where I have a problem.
Yeah, I I thought almost when he was, because it was looking like he wasn't signing any deal at all at Aston Martin. I thought for a moment that we just might get a different driver in that Aston Martin, and it was there was a bit of excitement from my side to say like, oh look, we're about to get a new driver entirely in that Aston Martin seat right now, which is pretty sick. It would be a really great idea, but overall, he does own the team, or his dad owns the team, so he can stay in F1. His performance this year, subpar. I mean, if you look at just the overall gap between him and his teammate, Alonso's destroying him in the head-to-head comparison, whether it be qualifying or even the race overall. And it really is a sad thing to see that. Oh, I mean, to be fair, he is going up against Fernando Alonso, who's a pretty
Yes,
good goat.
yes,
He's goated, but
he is absolutely. He could have potentially been a five-time world champion, and he's a sensational driver. And we do know that there is somewhat of an Alonso curse.
yeah,
A lot of his previous teammates struggle against him. He is a tough driver to go against. And here's the major difference. Right now, Alonso is doing his best to encourage Lance and probably help Lance. I mean, potentially because it's Daddy's team,
yeah,
but also because he's, I think, older and wiser than he was when he was a bit younger, and now is in the process of. I mean, if you've heard him in interviews, he said that he wants to make sure that Aston becomes a title winner, even if it doesn't happen while he's there. If he can build it into a title winner, that's what he wants to do. Kind of like what Michael Schumacher did with Mercedes. Built Mercedes up to become a competitor, left, Lewis stepped in, took it a step further, and then the following year they won a championship.
yeah. It's incredible. Well, we have to see how Fernando does achieve all of his great feats. Yeah, I think he's got his work cut out for him at this team. At the rate that the team's built and the facilities that they have, I think they really can. By next year, we will see. I expect greater improvements than what they've done for this year. Because I mean, for this year, they were mostly competitive up until midway of the first half of the season before the winter break.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yeah. I agree. Summer break, you mean?
summer break, sorry.
We're in the southern hemisphere for those listening.
Yeah, so for us it's a winter break.
Indeed, it is.
So yeah, I think with the capabilities and the ever more that they are getting more and more key personnel from both Mercedes and Ferrari and Red Bull, I think it's gonna be a phenomenal drive from him and a building exercise for the team. Once they, I think, let's see, I think it was once they got past the Austrian Grand Prix, I think it was.
Mm.
It just felt like Aston Martin slowly fell back and back and back with each race that went on to the British, Hungarian, and then Belgian Grand Prix. They kind of
That
showed
was a
up,
problem.
and
But that was, for me, it felt like a bit of a struggle for them.
mm,
Yeah, there was like there was an edge missing from Alonso, and I think that's maybe it's a bit of wear and tear on the car, maybe the engine and gearbox, but I don't know. Aston are in an interesting position because they're very quick, they're very pacey, they've got a really great driver in the seat, and I'm definitely not talking about Lance.
yeah,
Um,
not in the
But
slightest.
where they fall short is that now not Aston, McLaren is starting to jump into that conversation, and they've got two barnstormers in their car.
Oh yeah. So that's a great segue onto the next team being McLaren.
Indeed, indeed.
I think the biggest gain over for the season is definitely McLaren. We've heard Zach Brown say that what the car is at the, I believe was the British Grand Prix or even the Austrian Grand Prix, he said he was hoping that was what they had at the start of the year for the Bahrain Grand Prix, which, I mean, that was a lot of technical development that they did to get the car to where it is today. Had they been there, I think Mercedes would be currently in trouble. They wouldn't be sitting in P2 in the constructors.
Yep, we'd have a new customer.
We'd have
A
another
new customer.
customer. Yeah, Mercedes being the customer team entirely.
Indeed, indeed,
It's very rare that you see the works team being outperformed by a customer team.
indeed. That is so true. That is so true.
And if Mercedes don't get their socks up, those two drivers in McLaren, Lando and Oscar, I think Oscar, if you look at it, Oscar is probably one of the biggest performances for a rookie this year. Um, if we even compare him to the other rookies that were alongside him, he's got Logan Sargent, there's Liam Lawson with him, as well as Nick De Vries, right? It it
Oh,
was
it's night and day between those drivers, man.
it,
Absolute night and day.
it is. It's almost like Oscar's in a complete different league
Yeah,
to all of
yeah.
them. I mean, for
But
him to
the
stay
difficult-
within a second of
Mm,
Lando Norris is
absolutely.
it's incredible. You were saying?
I think what's interesting is that he won F2, he won F3, but so did Nick De Vries. But it was several years ago for Nick, and I don't know. There seems like there's a gulf in talent when you look at it. Like
Mm.
there's a real difference in talent. Like I think like when you watch Oscar Piastri this season, it makes you realize, oh, that's why they were so keen on moving on for Daniel Ricciardo and trying to get this kid because he is special. I think what's super interesting about him is he's always so even keeled. He's just always relaxed.
Mm.
Never seems like anything gets to him. He never seems phased. His interviews are always on point. He's just so calm, and he's the youngest. He's like 21. He's the youngest kid on the grid, and he's so poised, so calm. He's got the air of a world champion to me.
You honestly think? I think he's got the air of a multiple Grand Prix winner. I
Mm.
think to say that in his rookie year is very ambitious. I
Very ambitious, but I am one for an ambitious claim.
I,
I
I
am. I was the same guy that made ambitious claims about Max Verstappen, George Russell, Lando Norris, and now some of those predictions are coming true.
No, oh no, definitely. But I think I need a bit more years of experience under his belt in F1 before, because especially coming up, Singapore Grand Prix is coming up. He's never raced there, and the rest of this
Very
year,
true.
except for Abu Dhabi, he has never
Mm-hmm.
raced at any of these tracks. So this is the key point to show his adaptability first of all to learning
Yes,
a
indeed.
new circuit. Qatar coming up as well. He's only got one practice session, right? That's
Yeah.
gonna be the truest test because it's a sprint race at Qatar.
Mm.
His ability also in Singapore to stay calm, cool, even though the race is gonna get extremely heated, as well as keep it within the white lines. I mean, if he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't, he's in the wall. But that consistency is what's going to be needed out of him, especially at Singapore, where the rears are going to be eaten alive. The temperature is going to be unbearably hot.
Mm-hmm.
There's
And not to mention the humidity.
there's a lot of humidity, and the pressure is going to be on for him. You know, he's still trying to get into the top 10, preferably stay within the top 5.
Mm.
It's going to be, and if he fails, he's going to get added pressure more and more. Sure, I think Japan later on is going to be a bit of an easier track to do than Singapore, but
I think a
nonetheless,
lot of
it's
drivers have experience, especially with simulation on Suzuka, because it's a
mm,
popular track. Everybody has a lot of love for Suzuka, so I would think he'd be more comfortable there. I think he's definitely getting his sim time in,
mm,
and for me, if he's in the top 10, he's done great
yes,
because first time on a new track, it's and it's a grueling experience. Every driver says that Singapore's one of the hardest races. So if he's able to stay in the top 10, I'll be impressed.
I definitely do agree. Speaking of this, let's talk about his teammate in Lando Norris. I think Lando,
Lando.
if any of you are listening, you best believe that everyone at the Late Breakers is a massive Lando Norris fan. I think I can say that with pure confidence that we are
We're a
Lando.
massive fan of his racing, but some of his attitude problems, we'll see how he irons those out, and we'll give him a chance, but he needs to make sure that he doesn't do the same thing that he did with the whole Max Trophy thing.
Oh, breaking the trophies. Just don't break the car.
It's not the trophy; it's the reaction to the breaking of the trophy for me.
You really think so? I
Yeah, I mean, he was really really blasé about it. Like, that rich kid that comes to your house and then breaks your mother's like old vase that's really special to her, and then it's like, oh, dude, just get over it, buy a new one. That kind of thing.
yeah
It's like,
no.
dude, we don't operate like that. Like,
Uh, uh, Especially with that specific trophy where it was
exactly.
handcrafted. It was prepared
Yeah,
months
and it
and
took
months
6 months to make that. I mean, handcraft. So yeah, that's all. That's other than that, I love the kid. He genuinely feels like one of us.
No, definitely. Lando, I think
Uh,
his overall performance this year is quite high.
It
Managing to
definitely has been.
managing to stay in the top 10 consistently with the McLaren throughout this year, and now that he's got the boost to get that P2, I think multiple P2s, I believe it was, or at least multiple
Hmm.
podiums. Uh,
Yes, indeed.
Lando is he's there, and we can see that all he needs is just a race winning car, and you've got a multiple race winner, and even then, we can agree on a world champion on our hands right there with Lando Norris. And McLaren
I
are
think that I think that's where McLaren have it in the bag. Like, they have two drivers that I can comfortably say, yeah, either of those guys can win a world championship. If they have a race winning car, they can win a world championship.
definitely. I must agree. So speaking of the McLarens, let's move on to Alpine, right?
Oh
Where
man.
Oscar was supposed to race, right? And if he
Hmm.
was in Alpine right now, whew, I honestly don't know. Uh, how,
I think we'd be talking about him in the same way that we're talking about the rest of the rookies this season. What a difference a car makes.
the difference is it's madness at how big of a difference the car makes. As for the ladies and gentlemen who can't see what we have on screen right now, is I'm just have the current standings in F1 up on screen. It's just you can easily Google all of it, but I mean, let's look at where is he standing right now. Oscar Piastri is in 12th, right?
Mhm.
Pierre Gasly and Ocon are just slightly ahead of him by, I mean, 2 points. And that's both of them. Esteban's at 36, which Oscar is tied for P11 right now, and Gasly's 37. I honestly think I don't know if he would even be this high up on it. Pierre Gasly, he's been having a hard time at Alpine. I can honestly see it. We know our multiple race winner Gasly he can pull performance out of the car, but that Alpine is just not. It's not a race worthy car, you know. I they have the performance to fight against the top teams, but there's just no existence in that performance, or the reliability for the cars are too. It's too much for them to have. I mean, Pierre's retired so many times this year, as well as Esteban. I mean, let's not even talk about Australia, where
Oh, man.
yeah, that was a whole hot mess that happened.
Well, I mean, it's been 2 races in a row where they finished dead last. I think they had 2 DNFs at the race before Monza was
Dutch Grand Prix.
Grand Prix, yes. Did they have 2 retirements there, or was it the race before that?
It was 2 retirements at the Dutch Grand Prix. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. Like the thing is that's just a marker of really that's the thing that happened to Red Bull at the start of the new era of cars. I mean, I don't know what to say about Alpine because it seems like it's a top-down issue. If we look at it from the perspective of they haven't been able to they haven't they have a management team in place that haven't been able to push them in the direction that they want, but the demands that the board have of them being a title contender in a very short window with what seems like not as much investment as you would need in order to compete,
I mean,
it's so far-fetched.
2 years. I mean, if we just go back earlier this year in one of the races, I said the CEO of Alpine said that within the next race, they are going to be ahead of Mercedes. I was shocked. I think it was after the Monaco Grand Prix. I think it was during Canada, between Spain and Canada. He said that they're gonna be the head of the Mercedes, right? And I was like, how delusional are you? He said he's gonna be ahead of the Mercedes, chasing the Ferraris. And if we just go back to that time there, it shows that management's not even watching the races at all. They don't even have the time to look at the results of the races, because they would realize that, oh, look, just by results, Mercedes are finishing ahead of Ferrari. So how can you say you're going to be ahead of Mercedes and chasing Ferrari when Ferrari are clearly behind Mercedes?
Yeah, it's a pure lack of knowledge and a pure lack of consideration. I don't think they actually care, which is the unfortunate reality of these F1 teams having fickle people or fickle teams and title sponsors in the sport it's not conducive. It doesn't do anything beneficial. I mean, what we're seeing from Alpine with the firing of Opnar Safnauer is just, for me, was a strange one. Yes, they weren't doing great, but then to replace him with a person that knows literally nothing about F1 I mean, it's one of those things where I had a conversation with my father about it, and he was like, "Oh no, this is going to work out so great for Alpine," with the most sarcastic tone you could imagine.
Yeah. No, I have to agree. And the problem I have is they have 2 really good drivers on their hands.
2 race-winning drivers, mind you.
And yeah, but I think they're dealing too much with a political issue. And they think that, yes, we know that Formula One is one part politics, one part money, one part racing, right? Uh, that's the pie
Except if you're
chart.
Ferrari.
Ah, yeah, oh,
Except if you're Ferrari, then it's like 60% politics and then the rest.
yeah. And I feel like at Alpine, they think it's 90% politics, and if you win the politics war, you're going to magically get ahead in the races and with the results. But it's like, no, that's you need development. You need to put time in. It's almost like when Renault gave over the whole project to Alpine. It felt like they lost their soul. You know the meme? There's no passion, there's no vision, there's no goals, and that's what it feels like when you look at Alpine and their racing that they've built so far.
Considering the fact that, I mean, they have they have one of the better engines. I think their engine is can produce some of the most power, and they have shown that they can reach top speeds. Not being able to put it all together is just what's really frustrating about that team.
Hmm. Uh,
Because I find it hard to criticize like a driver like Pierre Gasly, who for multiple seasons had an average car at Toro Rosso and was putting that thing in the points consistently. So I can't look at that and say, oh, Pierre Gasly isn't good. Pierre Gasly can only drive one car. I mean, Pierre Gasly toe to toe with his against his teammate. I think they're evenly matched now.
yeah,
And
definitely.
this is his first season in the car against a driver who's been there.
Yeah, definitely. If we go and look at it, yeah, Gasly is one up on Ocon in the race head to heads. Gasly 6, Ocon 5.
Yeah.
I mean,
And considering the fact that that team, I mean, Gasly was supposed to be the person that the team is supposed to gravitate and build around. I mean, not Gasly, Ocon. It seems like Gasly's come in there and he's proving yet again that he is just slightly a cut above his teammate.
yeah, I must agree entirely. Right. Next team to look at. I'll let you have your pick. We can pick either Haas or Williams.
I would love to talk about Williams, man. I would love to talk about Williams.
All right, let's go then. Let's do the Williams team. Right. Logan Sargent. Logan
Oh, God.
Sargent.
Why did you start there?
Because the good part comes a bit later on
Oh,
in life. You know, sometimes you have to
yeah,
work
yes.
hard in order to get to the greater side of things. Logan Sargent, I think he had a strong start for the year. He
Yeah,
definitely
okay.
he was definitely feeling out the water. Miami was a bit of a hard one for him. I think it was his first time at Miami, and yeah, one obviously the Williams wasn't in a great spot that it like it is right now. But I mean,
Completely agree.
if we just go and look at it, I think he's he had a lot to learn from Alex Albon, and I'm not sure if having Alex is the greatest teacher for F1 because Alex is
Hmm.
also learning himself.
Mm.
But it is, I would say Alex is a good goal for him to have to try and beat.
Yeah, he's a great measuring stick. I mean, if you can compete with Alex, then you know you're a good driver. But the reality is that Logan is not competing at all.
I mean, he was last place in Miami, right? A lap down. I mean, we could say the same about Oscar. We could see he was also P19. It was the
Yeah, the
worst
rookie
result.
instinct.
Worst result for McLaren and Logan. But I mean, if you just look at it, Albon was 14th, right? That's with that Williams P14 is actually not bad. Four positions off of the points. It's it just is a hard one. I mean, if we just move on to the next race, Imola was obviously cancelled.
Yes, it does.
Logan again. Next one, Monaco. Very hard race, Logan P18. And that's only because we had two retirements, which were Kevin
Indeed.
Magnussen and Lance Stroll. Um, like James Val said, he is on a leash, and he's securing consistently last place. 20th is he's getting too comfortable with having 20th as his home position.
And I think that's the problem. It's Williams have said that they don't want paid drivers and they want to move into a different direction. But the reality is that it just Logan Sargent feels like as close to a paid driver as you could possibly get. I mean, we're talking about a guy who hasn't won anything in his career. Yes, he's been competitive in F2 for maybe 2 seasons, but even then, at the end of last season, when they had announced that Logan Sargent was going to be their driver, he didn't have enough super race license points in order to actually get the seat. So they were waiting until the end of the season, literally until the end of the season, to see if he could get enough race license points to be able to actually drive for them. I don't think that's the kind of driver you should be looking at putting in your car. I get it, he's an academy boy, but it genuinely doesn't make sense. Especially when you had a driver like Felipe Dragovich available with no academy.
I mean, we also
And
had
you had
Mick. Mick was also available.
Indeed, absolutely. And I mean, we saw Mick in the Mercedes. We've seen how much of a difference having the right type of team around you can make. So him going there with James there and having some sort of, connection, I mean, it would have been brilliant. I think it genuinely would have been a brilliant move.
Yeah. So I think, especially for now, Logan's got a lot of work cut out for himself. I mean, if we just go back to the points, I think Logan just scored his first bit of points. And no, he still hasn't scored any points this year. And I mean, the year's almost finished. We've only got a handful of races left. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Eight races left. And although he came very close in the Belgian Grand Prix, I believe it was. But
I believe it was.
even then, he couldn't get the points. I mean, he crashed out in the Dutch Grand Prix. Italian Grand Prix again, highest finish for himself was 13th. And now he's headed into the Singapore Grand Prix, and he's looking like he's gonna be the reliable factor for the teams to hope for the safety car to come out from.
Yeah, actually, he does. He really does. He's the one driver that you'd bet on having a conversation with the wall.
It's very saddening to see this. So I think by end of this year, I don't think Logan's gonna have a seat anymore. I think it's going to be a thing of it's over. I know that we usually say you gotta give the driver at least 1 or 2 years. Usually they say 3 years to find their feet into F1. But I mean, usually in that time you try and score some form of points or get somewhere.
Not, I mean, look, I'm not one that's going to sit here and say that nope, he needs to be scoring points, because we saw George Russell in the Williams not score points for pretty much his whole entire
Career.
time there until literally the end. But it was the consistency. We saw that George is a good qualifier. We saw that George can put the car in places where it really shouldn't be. He was finishing, yes, outside the points, but he was finishing in like the top, in the top 15 or so, which is really admirable for a car that really didn't deserve to be anywhere near that.
Definitely.
But so having that, and then now when you see like comparing Logan to Alex Albon, who is an absolute shining light. I mean, if we want to talk about a contrast in two drivers, we look no further than Williams, because Alex Albon has been sensational this season.
I mean, the head-to-heads is 12 in favor of Albon, 12-1. Oh. The reason why I say this with Logan, I understand the point of George Russell, but if you look at it, one, George's teammate was Latifi, right? There was never a chance for Latifi to ever get into the points, and with George, right, he was always just shy of making it near the points. In a Williams, it was like near of an impossible thing that he's actually trying to pull off. But within this year, at least, where Albon has managed to score at least a handful of points. I mean, oh, where is Albon in the standings right now? 13th, right? Albon's managed to score 21 points this year. Not once has Logan managed to just get into that position. Sure, Albon has the points Albon got a lot of the time was just like a scraping by P9, P10 points, which would make it incredibly harder for Logan to get any of the points. But I mean, in one of Albon's best races, he's got 6 points for the team, which it just shows the car is capable of getting there. I think Logan needs more of either he needs more support or a better push towards getting those points in the bag for the team.
See, I'm not certain that the car is actually competitive. I actually just think Alex Albon is out driving it.
That is a very good point. I do think he is out driving it, but I think in tracks where the car is more suited, Belgium and Monza,
Yeah, true.
right?
Very true.
Those
But
are
here's the
two
thing.
tracks where he could possibly get up closer to P10.
I agree with that, but well, we saw that he did a lot more than get closer to P10. But I think it's interesting that even on circuits that the Williams aren't supposed to be good at, Alex has been able to perform.
Yeah. See, that is the case where
Like,
I think he outdrives the car
see,
to a Mad Max
that's
standard.
what exactly that's what I'm talking about. Is that there's a difference with Alex. There's I think he's gelled with the way the car drives, and the team are now building it to suit his driving style, which is absolutely what you need if you're the main guy in the team, and it allows you to be able to like push the limits and then test things, and allows the team to continue developing, which is what's been really impressive by Williams this season. Is
No,
that I don't know how many upgrades they've bought, but it looks like the direction that they've gone with their updates have been really beneficial because they look like they work because Alex is performing in the car. But then it might just be Alex again, just being sensational, kind of like what we saw with Pierre Gasly last year in the AlphaTauri and Yuki Tsunoda in the first half of this season.
I definitely do agree. I think Alex, overall, out of all the drivers, I think Alex is the biggest standout driver for me this year. His overall performance and real drive to wanting to get into a higher team and just show why he needs to be on the grid has been proven. I mean, just there's 21 points within the this second half of the season. In a Williams, that is incredible stuff that he's managed to pull off. His capabilities are just there. But let's go to our point that we made in qualifying of the Italian Grand Prix or post qualifying the Italian Grand Prix. Is that if Lance Stroll did not re-sign with Aston Martin, I think we both can agree on this. If Alex was signed to Aston Martin, he would become a very dangerous driver for the rest of the drivers on the grid. Because
That's really easy to say in all honesty, because number one, you look at how quick Alex is. You also get the sense that he's a really good teammate. We saw that with Max. We saw that with when he was at AlphaTauri. He is a consummate professional, in my opinion. He's got genuine race pace, but putting him with a driver like Fernando Alonso, someone who he can genuinely observe and learn and absorb as much knowledge as possible from a two-time world champion, someone who is arguably one of the best drivers of his generation. I mean, potentially a five-time world champion in Fernando Alonso. So I think that, oh man, that would be so sensational for them because, oh man, Alex Albon is so quick, and then being able to hand over the car to him, and I think his driving style would suit the Aston. So I think it would be it would be genuinely, if Aston was serious, that would be a masterstroke by them. It's a genuine masterstroke if they did it.
I think it would be a serious, brilliant move from them to
And it would be a mark of intent, them saying we are freaking serious.
about taking him on. I totally agree with you. It's pairing him with a great mentor like Fernando Alonso. Especially the way in which Fernando, that we've seen this year, is trying to at least help Lance Stroll. I think Alex's growth is exponential. I honestly think he could immediately start competing against the likes of Charles Leclerc, George Russell, and Carlos Sainz, right?
100%. 100%.
There's just obviously that more time you'd need to spend with Fernando, where he would get
Yeah.
onto the Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen pedestal.
Yeah.
But his grind to get there is it's easy. Oh, let me not forget, he's on the level. He'd be on the level with Lando Norris as well. Like, it is so close, and I mean, all three of them were teammates or friends during their karting days. How cool! Just the idea of all three of them fighting each other on track. That, I mean, that's what I always wanted when I said,
Yeah.
like, Lewis should have gotten his eighth, and then he can retire. Fernando, obviously, I don't know if he should have come back, but Lewis gets his eighth, and then it's just all the young bloods that we have in Formula One at the top racing each other. It could be Max Verstappen versus Charles, Lando, Alex, and George. Like, top five. Imagine that being your top five, and it's all just young blood, which it's a missed opportunity. But I still see there's some potential for Aston Martin to what I would have called rectify their mistake. Is get or at least some team needs to get Alex alongside a multiple Grand Prix winner, or get him coached by them. Because Fernando Alonso plus Alex, even just thinking about it, on the same team, the amount of points.
It makes me so excited. It genuinely would be the most exciting thing that Aston could do. Again, I'm going to say it again. It would be a declaration of intent of them saying, "Yo, we're coming for you guys up at the top."
Yeah.
Because if you look at it, Alex Albon has put that Williams in places that it really oftentimes doesn't belong, and it's ridiculously impressive. Imagine him in a car that's actually fighting for podiums, man.
I honestly think if Alex was in that Aston this year, the start of this year, Aston would still possibly be, if we go look at the team standings, I still think
possibly be ahead of Mercedes.
Yeah, they could still potentially be ahead of Mercedes right as it stands right now, with Alex Albon there. Sure, the head-to-head against Alonso would be a tremendous tough challenge for Alex, but I think it's a worthwhile challenge for him.
Well, if you just look at Alex Albon versus Lance Stroll right now, you could really make an argument that he could replace him, and he should.
Very easily. I honestly do.
I mean, if you just look at their head-to-heads, it's one of those things where you go, yeah, no. If Alex was not even in a car that's fighting for a podium, imagine putting him in a car that's fighting for a podium. There'd be a huge difference. Yet, if you do this, if you took Lance Stroll and you put him in that Williams, where do you think he finishes?
Last, just alongside Logan. I'm serious with that one. There's no way that they would do it. Alex is just standout driver of it. So as I'm showing right now on screen as well, we will get to the last few drivers, which there's only two teams left, which is Haas.
Teams, yes.
No, 3 teams actually. It's Haas,
3 teams.
AlphaTauri,
Alpine, and
we did Alpine. It's Haas, AlphaTauri, and Alfa Romeo. So going on to Haas, Nico Hulkenberg, I think, has done his job. He's outperformed massively.
Masterstroke. I understand that. I really do like Mick Schumacher, but putting Hulkenberg into that car has been an absolute masterstroke for them. yes, it hasn't always
Resulted in
reaped
points.
the fruits that you want, but I think that's also a mark on the fact that the car's actually shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's genuinely not a good car, and when you have a really bad car, Nico's career is actually really sad when you look at it. He is a driver who potentially in the right situation could have been a multiple race winner, but he just hasn't been able to.
Yeah. I don't think he's gotten the chance to get
Yeah, he just hasn't.
into those one of those top teams for those
Yeah.
positions to be gained, right?
What would have been interesting was to see him in a McLaren a couple years ago when he was a little bit quicker.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the speed never goes. It's just the ambition.
I agree with that. Yep, I did make that statement last time around, and I cannot walk back on that because it's the truth. I mean, we can see it. The case in point is Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, I mean, he's incredibly fast right now, and I mean, hey, it just shows. I mean, he also showed the weakness that Kevin Magnussen also has. That Kevin's not that fast, and because Kevin had Mick as his teammate in that environment, Kevin's more experienced, so he understands how to obviously pull the team around. He was in the team
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
already,
Yeah.
and he kind of had an idea of what the car's balance was coming back
Mm.
into the team, but it was still it really is showing his performance. I mean, half the time he's not even that competitive. I mean, a few times like at Saudi Grand Prix, he managed
Yeah,
to beat Hulkenberg.
he's had some shining performances, but in comparison to last season when we were all singing his praises, especially in Brazil, this season has been really shaky, really shaky.
It really has, especially during the qualifying. Overall, his race head to head with Hulkenberg has been almost an even match. It's 7 to Hulkenberg, 6 to Magnussen. But it's still a thing. You're behind your teammate. Your teammate's just getting ahead of you.
But I think more than that, I think we can all agree that there is an eye test when you watch them drive. There's an eye
Yes.
test. You can watch it and say he's not as quick as his teammate in that car, and that's what I see when I look at Haas. I'm like, okay, he's extracting pace out of that car, but I don't. It doesn't seem like K Mag is able to extract a similar pace.
Especially over one lap, right? Hulkenberg
Exactly.
Magnussen is not looking like he's got the form for the one lap pace,
Mm,
and
mm,
he's more reeling it back in whereby like Hulkenberg will get into Q3 and Kevin fails in Q1, but over the race distance, as everyone faster than the horses gets ahead of the horses, they end
hmm
up coming close to each other and end up racing with each other like that. And it's just like, hey, you know, he still ends up like 7 seconds ahead of his teammate, which is, hey, you're failing as a teammate if you're
Yeah.
allowing your teammate to get that far ahead of you.
Yeah, the gap is too large. I mean, I think like you should be within at least 3/10 of your teammate.
Yeah, it to get beyond a second
It's not good. It's
it's
really not. It's really not. Beyond a second is not where you should be, because that just means that you're not extracting the pace out of the car.
yeah. There's clearly pace in it, but
Yeah.
there's something wrong with it. Right. Going on to the next team, because I don't think we have much more points for Haas them.
Nope, I don't.
It's the Alfa Romeos, right? Bottas, I think he's just been having a stroll, a walk through the park, until his contract ends. I think he's just enjoying reeling in the last few bits of money he can from the sport, and he's gonna look onto a next venture for himself. I don't know. I don't feel like this was a good project for him to take on. It he
At the
has
start,
had some good performance, but the
mm,
car starts off good, ends off bad.
yeah. I think at the start when he got there, there was a lot of excitement and a lot of, oh yeah, there's some cool things we could do here and all of that. He spent a lot of time in the sim, spent a lot of time in the garage with the engineers, spent a lot of time at the factory, and I think what we've seen is that that's slowly started to dwindle. And I don't think like it's to me when you look at it from the outside, it's kind of one of those things where you're like, that is now like the third driver that's come to that team with excitement and ambition and then just not
Had
been able to deliver and like or not been able to actually like present that vision. It does seem like it's a management issue at this point because they're not it's really strange. It's really strange because they have a lot of pieces that you would think would work together, but doesn't seem to ever come together.
See, I like to call it the Kimi Raikkonen retirement plan. That's what
That's
Bottas
what it
is
is.
doing.
It really is.
Is it, he was he, I honestly think Bottas is not a development driver. Yes, he was able to race at Mercedes to help them secure the championship, the constructors, multiple years on end, and
Mm-hmm.
be a good teammate for Lewis in the time
Mm.
ever since Nico left. But in terms of development of the car, I'm not too sure. From this, it doesn't look like there's much that he's been able to do at the team to help them develop. Maybe it's something we can only see from next year from Alpha.
Mm.
But at the current stand and rate, it looks like Alpha builds this car and says, "Here, it's good for the first 6 races." After that, it's almost like, yeah, we'll bring upgrades, but that's like maybe because our driver broke the car a little bit, so we need to
Yeah.
replace a part, and it's a good enough excuse to put in a replacement upgrade part for it.
Yeah.
And having him alongside Guan Yu Zhou last year, Zhou showed quite a bit of performance, and he looked like he had a drive, but I don't know. It looks like Alpha. It also hit the Kimi Raikkonen retirement plan. Hit Zhou as well. He doesn't seem to have much pace for the car anymore. And I mean, this is a young blood. I honestly think he should be pushing the hell out of the car. And if we just go, let's just go look at the last race, Italian GP. Bottas finished 10th for some points, and we got Zhou in 14th. It looked like it was just a normal Sunday drive for the guy, and it's why I think his seat's currently one of the seats that are in the ringer. Theo Porsche has been rated to possibly be linked to that seat. Drogovic as well has been linked to the seat, and yeah, I still don't think Alpha should be using a rookie driver unless the rookie driver is meant to be replacing somebody in Ferrari, right?
Yes. Yes. That makes sense.
But and this is the last few years Ferrari has to possibly have that type of a team unless they're gonna lean on Haas, right? And then it's gonna be a bit of an even messier story because we've heard from Mick that there's almost like no communication in Haas. So that means if Ferrari were to bring on a rookie driver and want him to build up some experience in this, he's going to sink. He's going to be thrown into the deep end with no comms and nothing, and told swim. But he's already 6 feet under the water, and then he's given the instructions of swim. So
and it's raining and storming. Let's not pretend that it's not raining and storming at Haas.
Exactly, and they really are. I think even for Alpha themselves, they've hit the Kimi Raikkonen retirement plan because they know Audi's going to take over in 2026, and there's going to be changes that's going to be There's going to be a new Audi engine most likely, and yeah.
Here's the thing: the car still has to be somewhat competitive. We've seen this before. Teams have come into F1, they've bought into a team, they've bought a back marker, and then they've been shit forever. I mean, that's the normal F1 formula. In all honesty, it's very rare that we get the Red Bull effect, where a team. But even then, the Red Bull effect took many years to get to. Red Bull came into the sport in I think 2008. They won their first world championship in 2010.
Yeah,
But
look at that.
considering the fact that they took over, okay, yes, they took over Jaguar, but they put in a ridiculous amount of money in order to build that car to where it is.
Yeah, but it shows it's just more that they're tired. I think they're tired. They're done,
That's what it feels like. That's what it feels like.
and it's
It
just
feels like it. It seems like at Alpha, everyone's energy gets sucked out of them eventually.
yeah, and there's no other passion towards
Yeah,
the project
yeah.
anymore, and it's just a thing of yeah, no, we're a Ferrari customer team,
Yep, basically.
and
But I think that's actually an interesting point, is that the Ferrari customer teams have really struggled over the past couple of years.
yeah, I mean Haas and Alpha
Mm,
have been suffering ever since even the 2019 incident. We still don't know what happened,
absolutely.
but ever since then,
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
yeah, there's been some real performance drop-offs from them entirely.
Mm.
Right. The other team that we need to speak of is the Red Bull teams. Those are the last two teams. We got four drivers there. We got
You
Nick
mean
de
Toro
Vries,
Rosso?
Toro Rosso, and Red Bull are the last two teams.
Well, technically, it's AlphaTauri. For those listening, Toro Rosso is what the team used to be called,
Uh,
which literally translates to Red Bull in Italian.
and I'm calling it not an Alpha Tauri because they can most likely have a name change after this season.
That is absolutely true. And you know what? When they said that they're going to have a name change, and they put out a poll saying, "What do you want the name to change to?" I was one of the first people that said Toro Rosso. Change it back to Toro Rosso.
Yeah, it was a good name, and I think it was a failed project
Yeah.
on their side to try to change it into a fashion brand
I agree with that.
and fashion apparel.
Yeah.
And yeah, and on top of it, I mean, Nick de Vries did not perform.
Oh man.
It was a big disappointment. So much so that Red Bull subbed him out immediately for Danny Rick. And then Danny Rick,
To be honest with you, they had no choice. They really had no choice there.
they really didn't.
I mean, Nick de Vries was struggling, really, really struggling, and it's not something. I mean, you expect an adjustment period, but the thing is that when he came in and he looked like he was really off the pace, especially then when you look at the performance of Yuki Tsunoda, who was putting that car just out of the top 10 every race in the
Yeah.
first half of the season. He was looking sensational. He was the for me he was the definition of out driving the car.
Yeah.
You know, he was just out driving that car. That car was not able to hold a candle to the pace that it should have been, but he genuinely put it in places where it didn't belong. So I think Yuki has definitely proven himself. The problem is now this half of the second half of the season, he has sort of slipped back into the whole, you know, if you ask me, the angsty teen screaming on the radio Yuki again, which is a little disappointing.
Mm.
But yeah, when there's a lot of moving parts around you, I mean, there's got to be a bit of fear there, especially when Danny came back and now you're like, oh crap, I got to compete against a multiple race winner. And
And
then
it's a good motivator for him. I
it
honestly
is,
think just to get
but then
get that drive back.
mm, but then obviously we know what happened to Danny Rick at the Dutch Grand Prix. He broke his hand, and we don't know how long he's going to be out for. There is talks that he's probably going to come back at Suzuka. We're not too sure about that at this
Uh,
point. I think the initial discussion that they had was that they wanted him back for Singapore. And my initial reaction was, do not put that boy back in a car in Singapore. Let's not do that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, let's rather not do that, because that's going to hurt him a lot, I think.
What
Singapore is
I've
not a
heard,
place we want to come back to.
yeah, so what I've heard so far is that he's not gonna return until Qatar, but potentially.
Hmm.
So that is he's got quite a few weeks off, and that's 6th of October, Qatar. So he's got well over just over a month of resting
And rehab.
and rehab so that he can get back into form, which leaves Liam Lawson in his place.
Mm-hmm.
And overall, Liam has shown some form of pace.
Well, he's at least shown that he's better than Nick DeVries. And
Definitely.
what's really disappointing about that is the fact that he is actually a Red Bull Academy boy, and Red Bull, well, Helmut Marko decided, oh, I'm gonna watch this one kid Nick DeVries race one time for a different team, and go, yeah, put that kid in the car.
And then, I mean, Lawson, his first race, P13, not bad. Next race, P11, to finish ahead of Oscar Piastri, even.
I
Three
just want to go
seconds.
back to his first race. Let's just go back to his first race and say that that was the most baptism of fire event I've ever seen in F1.
I mean,
Imagine
yeah.
that was your first race. Keep in mind, he didn't have practice. He didn't have nothing. He jumped in at quali, bruv.
No, he jumped in practice 3. He jumped in practice 3 and
Practice
entered
3 and
quali.
quali, dude.
That's
I
all
mean,
he
come
had.
on, man.
And into a
Jump in
wet
into
race as
a
well.
wet,
Oh my goodness.
greasy, all of, they experienced every element of racing he could experience. He experienced that in one race.
It shows.
And he did super well. I mean, he came 13th in his first F1 Grand Prix, in his first race. That was something that, I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. If you got thrown into that, you would be like, oh, no, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, especially with like intermediate into wet tires. That's
Man,
madness.
they used every tire in the in the book at that race.
It was
All
it
the
was
tires
madness.
available.
It was absolute madness, and I have to give him props for it. We still yet to see what his next of trial by fire, which is Singapore. I wish him
That indeed is a trial by fire.
all of the luck. He's one of the few F2 drivers who's going to get a chance to race at Singapore, and I wish him the best of luck at it. He's alongside a couple other rookies, and I'm ready to see red flags and safety cars.
Oh, yeah, that's all. Honestly, that isn't the anticipation, because the amount of rookies that are on grid are. It's going to be an interesting one. All of those boys are going to have a tough race.
They really will have a tough race. The other driver, Yuki Tsunoda, had what I would call a forgettable season, right?
The first half of the season was good, but I can't disagree with you. He's been at the start of the season. I would have said he was one of the most consistent drivers on track. Someone completely out driving the car and putting it where it didn't belong. But as the season's progressed, I think it's just gotten harder. And then maybe with the progressions of teams like McLaren, and then the slight step-ons that Williams have made it harder for them to compete, and that's possibly what's causing Yuki to slip back a little bit more.
I do agree. I think it's ever since the Monaco Grand Prix where he started to fall down, right? It was he was consistently P11 or P10 throughout the whole year. At the first six, what's that? First 5 races, 1, 2, 3. First 5 races of the year, P5, P10 or P11. And I mean that's pretty good in an AlphaTauri. Obviously, previous years AlphaTauri had a lot more pace. They could manage a P7, 8 with ease.
I agree. Yep.
But knowing the development of the car and overall, we've seen how they've kept falling back. And for them to fall back, but he's managing to only lose 2 positions from previous results, like P8 to P10. That's definitely not bad at all in the slightest.
No,
for
it
him.
isn't.
But whatever happened from the Monaco Grand Prix really, I think, hurt his confidence and his drive, because ever since then, the boys barely managed to keep up to above P15. He has really been struggling left, right, and center to be to push that car above and beyond that. I mean, Zhou managed to jump him up in the championship. We can just see here P15, P12, P14, 19, 16, 15. Belgium was one of his better showings where he got back into P10, but then at the Dutch Grand Prix, P15, and in Italy, he has did not start, which is a bit crazy.
It really is. I think I think it's really difficult for AlphaTauri right now because I think they have one of the slower cars on the grid, so they're not particularly competitive. The reality is that they should be a lot more competitive than they are because they're the Red Bull sister team. This you would expect that from them.
And I mean,
But
yeah,
go ahead.
uh, Helmut Marko even made the comments about it. That's their sister team. They can't be
Yeah,
this low in the
not the
constructors.
junior team. It's they keep saying sister team, so you have to be able to qualify that by actually showing it, not just saying it's a sister team and then actually having nothing to show for it.
Yeah, yeah, it is just absolute madness right now. Then the last two of this little run through of the last race results: Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez. I think Max has done his job. I don't think there's much we need to even speak of Max. He's done his job.
Well, I just wanna point something out. I just we should honestly give Max his flowers. I think people we're being too blasé and oh yeah and too a matter of fact about it.
Mm-hmm.
This kid is freaking special, man.
Mm.
He is so special.
Yep.
Like it's annoying. It annoys me how freaking quick he is. It genuinely does. Because it's like, what are you supposed to do against that guy?
Build a quicker car, like he said. Build a quicker car. That's what you have to do if you want
And
to beat him.
yeah. And I think that's what's really exciting. I think it's really exciting. He's they found a perfect marriage in Adrian Newey, Max Verstappen, and Christian Horner.
Yeah,
Red Bull have proven again that they that formula seems to work. I mean, Helmut Marko has also proven that he is a bit of a moron in a sense because he is there've been a many a fuck up there. But
yeah.
I mean, number one, them managing to sign Max Verstappen, considering the fact that Mercedes were also trying to sign Max at the same time, and them having a clearer path for Max to go on in order to get into F1 and a race winning car, that made a massive difference. That was the deciding factor for Max to join them because in an alternate reality, that boy and Hamilton are in the same team, and that shit is crazy right now.
That's another Nico. That's another Nico Lewis situation that was going to
Oh
happen.
man, yeah, absolutely.
I
So yeah, I think Max Verstappen has just proven that he is a cut above the rest. He is one of the he's one of those talents that you look at and you go, damn, that's the difference, hey?
yeah. I mean, he's clear cut. He's got the form.
Mm.
Sure, he's got the car, but if we just look at the level of consistency within each race, within the car, Jean Pierre tells him Max do a 32.6. Max does a 32.6, 7, 8, 10 laps in a row without fail. I mean, where do you find that type of consistency in a driver, right? It's almost unheard of to see that level of consistency, and that's just
Well,
the
I
level
mean,
and caliber he is at this point.
the last two drivers we saw with that kind of consistency were named Michael Schumacher and Sir Lewis Hamilton.
Exactly.
Those are the last two drivers we saw that had that insane consistency. And also it goes back to how Max loses, well, which he hasn't done much this year. Uh,
B2. B2, yes.
yeah, exactly. It's how you lose, man. Felipe Dragovic said it last season in F2. It it winning is good, but it's how you lose that's really important. Making sure that you're still on the podium, making sure that you're still getting maximum points even if you don't win. And I think that's what, like, to bring it back to last year and Charles Leclerc versus Max Verstappen, that's what happened. It's the how you lose really is what messed up Ferrari's chances and Charles' chances of a world championship, because when they lost badly.
Yeah, they definitely did. It we have to do it. We gave Max Shaw early in the season. We said, yeah, no, give him the championship. He's won it already.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't just say those types of comments without recognizing the accomplishments that he's doing. To be able to do this lap after lap, race after race, eh, without fail, right? The only person he ever lost out to was his teammate who was in the same car,
Yeah.
and that was on street circuits where his teammate is arguably
Phenomenal.
better off
Yeah.
at, you know.
I agree.
And I mean, for your whole year, your worst result is a P2. That's quite.
gross, bro.
It's incredible to see this type of thing, and I think we're very fortunate to live in a period where we got to see Hamilton's dominance, Schumacher's dominance, and Max's dominance right now, as well as Vettel's dominance. Let's not even forget Vettel's dominance and Alonso. Like,
Yeah, I was about to throw in. I was about to throw in my wild horse right there. That's. Yep.
just
Fernando Alonso, man.
just to see their
Look,
dominance.
for me, Fernando Alonso, the parallels between Fernando Alonso and Max Verstappen are actually quite astonishing. Because if you look at it, Max Verstappen was 24 when he won his first world championship, beating a 7-time world champion. Do you know who also did that? Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, Michael
So,
Schumacher. Yeah,
you know, exactly. And it's just a mark of a great driver. I genuinely think he's got. I think he might have the most talent on the grid.
yeah, it definitely does. But
Yeah.
going on to that, you know that rumor, you know, or the curse. There's a 7-time world champion appears, gets beaten by a 3-time world champion, and then another Red Bull comes along to win the championship 4 times, and then we get our next 7-time world champion. So,
What are you trying to say? What are you trying to say?
I'm trying to say we gotta see
Look,
what's gonna happen in the future. You know,
In my ideal scenario, this is how it's going to go down.
Yeah.
Right? Max is going to win his next two world championships. Cool. He's got his 4, probably even 5, because the rule
Yeah.
changes only 2026. So cool. He's got his 5 world championships. Then McLaren comes and cleans it out for the next 7 years. That's
Oh.
my goal. That's my dream.
Oof,
Oh,
that could
but
be
that's again, it's a pipe dream. McLaren haven't won a world championship since 2008.
it is a
Until
harsh thing.
one more recently than Ferrari. So I'm just saying.
It definitely is. Okay, I realize we need to wrap it off with one last team pairing: George Russell, Lewis Hamilton. I think overall.
Ooh, we didn't talk about Checo. We didn't talk about
Oh
Checo.
yes, Checo. Let's go back, guys.
Respect Checo.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry about that, Checo. But
No problem. But
Checo,
man, I think the reason why we probably overlook Checo is because he's been rather overlookable this season.
incredibly overlookable. I mean, just with the last race to be a second, whole second off your driver, off your teammate,
Mm-hmm.
who is leading the championship. Not just you're just a second off of your teammate, right? Your
Yep.
teammate who's winning the championship currently,
Yeah.
and to allow you the rest of your competition to be ahead of you. I I I I know Bottas had his bad days as well, right? But it wasn't
Yes,
this.
we did.
It wasn't this bad that Checo. I mean, it was going
I've never
6.
seen.
Yeah?
I've never seen Bottas have a slump the way Checo did.
It really did, and I mean 6
Yeah.
races in a row not to make Q3. 6.
That's so horrid. That's so bad. I mean, that's the kind of thing that if he was Nick de Vries, he would have been replaced.
Yeah.
If he wasn't the Minister of Defense, he would have been replaced.
Albon was replaced the moment. I think Albon got like what 3 races, and then Albon. Oh no, it was Gasly. Gasly got replaced by Albon. So fast.
Yeah. Yeah. Red Bull are a ruthless team in that sense, but I mean, oh man, the Checo thing is so weird because ultimately, I think what Red Bull want to do is they want to put Danny back in that car.
I do think they want to do it, but the other thing about putting Danny back in is, are Red Bull ready to manage both of them
Mhm.
because they might just get back onto. Because you saw how tense 2018 was with Danny and Max in the same team.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Are they ready to
Yeah.
deal with that again? Because it just might break out to another Lewis Nico rivalry that will happen incredibly.
Potentially. I mean, there's potential for that happening. I think that they're both a lot more mature.
Definitely.
Danny Ricciardo has gone on a lot of journeys and also had a humbling experience having his season like basically assaulted by Lando. I mean,
Oh
he
yeah.
couldn't hold a candle to Lando. So I think that must have been a really humbling experience. And then if he goes back to the team, it's not like they're at the same level. It's not like Danny's going back there and he's like, "Yeah, I'm a multiple race winner. You're also a multiple race winner." It's no, I'm a multiple race winner and you're now a three-time world champion. There's 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 levels to this shit.
There really is some levels to it. Hey.
So I think there will be a 100% understanding that Danny is not the number one guy. I think there will be an understanding that Danny will want to gun for that world championship, which in every rights he should.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think it would be the closest competition for Max, having a driver like Danny Ricciardo next to him and against him, because again, it's the motivation you lose, not the speed. And we see now more than ever that Danny's got a lot of motivation. And I think the added motivation is that he even thinks that, yo, dude, I can take Checo's seat. If not this season, then definitely next season.
Definitely.
Then and then at least he'll have one season when hopefully there's Red Bull are still competitive enough to win a world championship where he can take a challenge to Max and try to win a world championship. Because to me, nothing would make me happier than watching Danny lift a world championship.
Oh, it would be beautiful to see Danny
Very few
lift that
things in F1 would
that
make
cup.
me. I mean, there are three things that would make me happy in F1. One, seeing Lewis Hamilton win an eighth world title. Two, watching Danny Ricciardo win a world title. And three, watching Lando lift a world title.
And your dark horse getting his fifth world title. Don't forget Alonso. How can you leave Alonso out of the?
Yeah, I mean, like getting Alonso getting a third world title would be, oh man, it
It,
would it would be so satisfying. It really would, because he's left out of so many conversations that he should not be left out of.
it is truly saddening to see.
Yeah.
I think overall for Checo, it really is a thing of he tried his hardest to fight Red Bull to say, look at me, I must be another driver that can win the championship.
Yep.
But it clearly shows again, as much as Red Bull are going to try hide it and run away from the thing, or that they build the car for Max specifically, Checo proves the fact that they build the car for Max, right? And he said countless of times, the car, the direction that the car is being built in is going away from me.
Yeah.
So whether
But
that's his excuse to say that they're building it for Max, or it's just his excuse for why he doesn't have any form or pace with the car, when I think they're just building the car to get better and better.
that's exactly what I think. I think you have to lean in the direction that's going to win. And Max is winning. So what do? You lean into the guy that's actually putting the car where you want the car to finish.
Mm,
And if you have to lean into a guy, number one, you're leaning into the world champion, which is by all accounts what you're supposed to do. You know, you lean into the guy that's brought you a championship or can bring you another world championship. So they honestly have no choice. They honestly have no choice. But that's why I think that they're probably looking to replace Checo with Danny, because Danny has the same driving characteristics as Max Verstappen. They
yeah,
both they both like a solid front end with a more loose rear end. So I think the car is more set up for Danny.
and we'll see the performance if Red Bull ever decide to put Danny back into that seat, because yeah, Checo's performance little lackluster, especially with the second
Yeah.
half. We still need to see more.
Yeah.
It is Singapore next up. He is more favored in people's eyes to be the winner, but we will have to see how that turns out for him.
Honestly, the form that Max is on, I don't see it.
I also don't see it happening at all. I mean, Max just overtakes him regardless of whatever strategy gets pulled. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
there's no
I think,
fighting.
and that's the truth. It's the come rain or sunshine, Max Verstappen is coming for you.
Yeah,
He's the boogeyman. He is Al Kukui.
he is. He is him, you know?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's him, dude. He
He's
is
him.
him.
That's who he
As a matter,
is.
you know that feeling that you got in like 2000, like 17, 18 with Lewis Hamilton. That's
Yeah?
that feeling.
Yeah.
That's the same feeling. It's that yeah, he's him, dude. He's him.
Hmm. It really
Speaking
is.
of which, Lewis Hamilton and George Russell, man.
The last two drivers that we have to look at for today,
Mm-hmm.
I think they are. Lewis has done a really good job with the car that they have. I know
Yep.
last year he took on the brunt of the experiments on the car,
Yep.
and it's led to his points and being actually quite defeated by George Russell. But I also think there's two parts to it, right? I think with the porpoising type of issue, especially with how fast these cars are going, it
Mm-hmm.
really hurts the drivers. And Lewis he's a bit of an older man, you know. I mean, we saw after the one race, he stood by the car off for quite a while, even holding his back at how hard. I think it was
That
the
was the same race where he could barely get out of the car.
yeah, it was
Remember that? I think he needed help getting out of the car because
no,
it was a hectic race, but the
Azerbaijan.
porpoising was really bad for Mercedes. I believe it was, yeah.
It was Azerbaijan,
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, Azerbaijan, yeah.
and I think this
Very,
is where I think just youth plays a little bit of a
yeah.
part in favor to George Russell. I think he can
Yep.
take that beating from the car a little better because his bones aren't going to cry immediately about that pain.
I can attest to it because I'm 30 years old and Lewis is 5 years older than me, and I can tell you with 100% certainty that back pain is for real, and it can be really hectic. So I can imagine that Lewis must have been going through it and probably still is. So yeah, I mean, consider the fact that George had a really good season last year. This season, Lewis has really been on the pace. He has really shown that he hasn't lost the speed at all. Um, but he has been rather complacent. The team has had some really average performances. The car is it with the new qualifying format, the car is struggling to heat up the tires and get them into the window for especially Q1 on the hards.
Mm-hmm.
And Mercedes have had issues on the hards all season. So I mean, this new qualifying format does throw a spanner in the works for the team. But other than that, they've looked really consistent. They have had some stinkers in quali, but they've always managed to pull it back somehow and end up in the top, usually the top eight.
Yeah, top eight. It is correct. Lewis hasn't
Yeah.
positioned for the start of the race. Hasn't been lower
Mm.
than P8. Um, or I should say, no, I shouldn't say that. He hasn't finished the race
Yeah. Yeah.
below P8. P8 being his lowest points finish, and I mean, he's quite consistent. He doesn't have a single DNF. Whereas if we
Yep.
just compare it to Russell, Russell's got two DNFs, which was both self-inflicted DNFs.
Indeed.
It
Indeed.
in Canada, he overdrove the car, put it into the wall, and it just resulted in him having to retire the car because
Yeah.
he damaged it. I don't remember what happened in Australia. It could have been
Neither do
the
I.
restart, or it could just be a Mercedes failure that happened to George.
Yeah, potentially.
But it was a
But
thing.
I don't recall a Mercedes failure this season.
I
I
also
think it's only been driver error.
it really has been, and especially Canada's performance. George was in a
Mm.
phenomenal place, but
Man, oh,
he's
a little overzealous,
he
a
really
little
is.
too excited.
I think he was looking at his peers. You know, he saw how Alex is overdriving the car to the limits, and it's like
Yeah.
there was no need for him to overdrive the car at that moment, right? It was still before even the pit stop phases for him.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
There is no need. You know, there's still a whole strategy that needs to play itself out, and we know how good George has been a lot of the times. to get that strategy going. I mean, let's look at
He's the driver that will take a risk.
yeah,
Like if it's a wet race and it's starting to dry out, George is jumping in for some slicks. Or if it's starting to get a little wet and spray, George is one of those guys that's like, okay, look, we're boxing for inters. He's he's like Carlos in that sense where he'll take a risk and like tell the team, yo, this is what we're doing.
yeah. Let's get some of this. And
Mm.
uh, you see, I think he just needs a bit more consistency. He needs to learn when is it time to try and overdrive the car. When's the
Yeah.
time to just sit back, let the strategy play out. You know, he's too focused on getting on the comms. I mean, look at Netherlands. How the hell did I was? What did he say? He was predicted for a podium today, and he ended
Yeah. And
P17.
then
It,
yeah.
you know, it's something where he needs to get off the radio more and
Yeah.
put his head down. Toto needs to do the thing that he always does with Lewis. He's just like, Lewis,
Yeah.
put your head
Shut
down
up.
and get going. Start
Essentially,
racing.
basically, Lewis, shut up, dude. Race. Just drive the car.
Just race.
Like,
Get
like
the
that
car.
one message when he calls him and he says, Lewis, we know the car is bad. Just drive it.
Just drive. And then guess what?
Just drive it.
Lewis ends up like P5, P4, bro. It's
Yeah,
just like,
exactly.
calm down, bro. It's not end of the
Calm
world,
down,
but
Lewis. But then also, Lewis is.
oh, dramatic.
I think he's still trying to come to the reality that it's like, yo, dude, we are not the fastest team, and we're not able to compete right now, and it's really irking him.
We can see that it's getting under
Yeah.
his skin every single time.
Yeah.
It's just like
Every time Max wins a race, he's like, motherfucker.
I need to get. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
it really is.
And that's why when everyone's like, yeah, I think Lewis is gonna retire, I'm like, you guys are high, bruh. You guys are high. Because if Fernando Alonso is still here and he's still fast, you don't think Lewis has still got it? What do you think Lewis is washed up? What did you think the car was the only reason Lewis won? Nah, bro. You gotta put more respect on that guy's name, bruh.
It really is there, man. So that concludes at least our run through of all the drivers and their last race thoughts, as well as overall season performance this year.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So let's give them a rating. Right. I've got the tier list up here. I can maybe share it for you so that you can see the tier list if you look on the stream. But I've got all 20 drivers here. Obviously, we've got Nick de Vries in here instead of Danny Rick or Liam Lawson right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Nick is the better driver to be putting on the list because the others barely have even driven.
Yeah, they've
yet.
only had like 2 races each, I believe. So it's not. Yeah, it wouldn't be fair on them to put them on that list right now.
Yeah, so we've got S, A, B, C, and D tier, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, okay, wait, I believe we should try add in another row. Add row below. And then we should just say F tier because we know there's one driver who belongs in F tier.
Yep. Yeah,
Right.
just drop him there. That's all you needed to do. There we go. Now we can focus on the rest of the list.
Alex Albon. We're doing this rating purely based off of this season alone, right?
I'm putting him in S.
We got Alex Albon
I'm putting him in S.
up in S tier, right? I can agree with you. I do agree. Alex, his
Because
performance this
there's
year.
several points in the season where it's like that car doesn't deserve to be where it's at, and he just puts it there. So yeah, that Alex is my S tier. I know we're starting off really high, but it's the honest truth.
It really is. I have to agree. Logan Sargent. Myself, I was putting Logan in a D or C tier,
Yeah.
possibly even lower, but yeah,
Yeah, D tier, easy money.
easy for him. Kevin Magnussen.
Yeah, I put him in the D as well. He hasn't been too impressive to me.
Right. Nico Hulkenberg. This performance, for me at least, I would have rated
Yeah.
him a C tier.
Yeah, it's between a C. Yeah, it's
C or B.
it's
thing
between
is-
it's B or C, but I think it's a C. I think
See,
it's more a C.
I think Nico had a lot more time to get more points, and he's currently sitting in 14th. And the thing is, he's sitting behind Alex. With the Haas, he's shown he's able to get into Q2 consistently.
You know what? He's a B tier. The B tier. There you go.
B tier.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you look, actually looking at the driver standings actually puts it in perspective that he's only just behind Alex Albon, and the Haas is not quick enough.
Okay,
Not quick enough.
you need to have more context to that because he is sitting at 9 points while Alex is at 21 points, which is a very big gap
There's
still.
there's a lot of nuance in that actually.
There's a lot of gap. The fact that Alex got all of those points within the second half of the season, which is
Yeah, yeah.
even crazier, which is why he's warranted for S tier. But onwards, we go to Valtteri Bottas. I think another C tier.
Yeah.
He's performed,
Yeah.
but he's still
But
on that.
it hasn't been bad. It hasn't been great either. But he's been consistent, so I guess a C works. Yeah, C is good for him.
D
Guan Yu
tier for
Zhou.
Zhou. I think Zhou has been very silent half the time.
Yeah,
Always
he has
behind.
he has had a silent season.
Always behind.
I'm gonna
his
give
teammate.
I'm gonna give Pierre Gasly a B tier.
Pierre Gasly B
I'm
tier.
gonna put him in B. I'm gonna put him in B because
Yeah.
he's not been like super quick or anything, but he's been very competitive against his teammate,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the best marker that you can have, considering the fact that Ocon has been in that team for at least 3 years, and he's supposed to be the number one driver. For Gasly to walk into a car that he's never driven before, and
Take over.
somewhat get to grips with it a lot quicker than we expected, because I expected him to take the rest of the season to really get up to speed with it. But he's proven that, yeah, he's a high quality driver and should be in that B tier.
Yeah, I can agree entirely with that. For me, I would then put Ocon in C tier
That's
as
where
that's
I
quite
put
valid.
Ocon as well.
Nick, I have to put you under the F tier
F tier.
this year because the performance was not there. And I just don't think. I think your time for F1 wasn't right. As well as being
Yeah.
thrown into that Alpha Tauri, not an Alpha Tauri. Definitely not. You're definitely not up to grips with the car. And I think the Williams car suited him a lot better. And I think the
Yep.
driving style needed for the Red Bull cars are completely different to the Mercedes
I agree with
cars. So, unfortunately, this performance tapered off and fell short quite hard. Yuki Tsunoda, I want to put it between B and C tier.
I want to put him in the C tier, but I also want to put him in the B tier. For now, I think C tier because the second half of the season's been a bit of a drop off. So yeah, we'll see how he looks at the end of the season.
Yeah, we will definitely have another list at the end of the season. Fernando Alonso, I mean, just this year alone.
If it's not an S, if that's not an S, I don't know what is.
This year alone, Fernando has done a masterclass. Like, he's destroyed his teammate, clearly shown his first driver at the Aston Martin after taking over from Vettel, and the development he's going to do for next year with this car, I think it's just a no-brainer that he's. I mean, even if we look at it, he's sitting in third right now. There's a reason why he's in third on the constructors standing in the driver standings right now. Apologies for that. So, clear cut, Fernando has shown performance. Oscar, I definitely have to put in A tier.
He's an A tier.
He's definitely
an absolute
A tier.
That boy is a gem.
I do think
that boy is a gem.
He's with the newest performance. I think we need to also remember. Start of the year, he wasn't too hot. He was barely scoring points at the start of the year. If we just go back to Oscar.
He really wasn't. I think it's the
2 DNFs.
He had a couple DNFs, but I think he's shown a decent amount of consistency in the fact that he's been close to scoring points, considering the fact it's his first season and that McLaren wasn't great at the start of the season.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, also it being his rookie season, so I think he's had an A. I mean, I can't think of a rookie season better than Oscar Piastri's other than Lewis Hamilton. That's the only rookie season that in my memory banks that I can think of being better than Oscar Piastri. Other than it's Lewis and Max Verstappen that are the last two drivers that made me have a damn, this is a really good rookie season.
Yeah. I mean, we still need to come a little bit off the horse. You know, Oscar hasn't
There's
scored in 8 of the races, right? Points,
true.
albeit a few of the race. Azerbaijan, he was just out of the points in P11,
Yeah,
but he's got a 19th at Miami. I mean, I think that was his first time driving Miami ever.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so we can see his adaptability is a little bit slow. Monaco, he scored some points. Spain, he just fell short. Canada, he also fell short. Austria couldn't get to grips with the car, and that was when they got one of the bigger upgrades for the car,
mm-hmm.
right? Silverstone, but the real thing is for the jump to go from Austria in 16th position to 4th position
Just Silverstone. Yeah,
in that, and then consistently almost staying in the top 10 except for his Belgium DNF.
yeah.
I think it's pretty good on his side of things, right? Lando, I have to
I
say
also put him in the A tier.
the eight.
I can't put him in the S tier this season. He's been good. He's been really consistent. He's grabbed some podiums. He's looked great. But also the first half of the season was a bit shaky. There were some incidents over the season. So, yeah, I think A tier is where he belongs there.
Yeah, he definitely does. I think first of the A tier, definitely is
Yeah.
for
No, it's a high end.
his
It's like
position.
if there were pluses, he'd be an A plus.
Yeah, he definitely is. Lewis Hamilton this year, I think
I
it's
put
a
him
real
in
ask.
I put him in I put him in A tier.
You put
Um,
A tier.
he's been great. But I haven't.
There wasn't
It
that
it
standout performance for me from
Yeah,
Lewis.
exactly. Yeah, that's what it is. There's nothing. There hasn't been a moment where I go, ooh, just that. Mm,
Oh, yeah.
yes,
There's
yeah,
the magic
you know,
that he has,
yes,
that
yeah.
touch.
That. Whereas I've seen that from Alonso, I've seen that from Albon, I've seen it from Max. Um, yeah, that extra sprinkle of magic that they have. I feel like it's not that Lewis doesn't have it or isn't like capable of it. It's just that I think Mercedes is still getting to grips with the car, and it's it's not
It's,
there yet.
yeah, I think, and we can see this by looking at George Russell's performance. I think I would put George in front of Oscar, A tier as well, in front of
Yeah,
Oscar,
I
but
agree with that.
behind Lando. I think
Yeah.
Lando showed more consistency. I think purely because Lando's DNFs. Like if you just go and look for Lando, you know, Lando hasn't gotten. If he has a DNF, which he doesn't have a single DNF, Lando's got that
Mm,
level of consistency down for himself within the car, and he's not making that driver error that you'd expect from a rookie. You know,
yeah,
George made those those rookie mistakes that he shouldn't be making those rookie mistakes now that he's in a
I agree with that.
Mercedes,
But
and
even then, I mean, it's a split season in F1, so you should be.
he should be
So
up to
like,
grips and
yeah,
level.
yeah,
Carlos Sainz, Carlos Sainz. I
8 year,
think
8 year.
I think ahead of Russell. It's just to beat Lando. I think is it's interchangeable between the two of where they could be sitting, right?
Yeah, yeah. I actually think I would put George ahead of Carlos.
You think George ahead of Carlos? Okay.
Yeah, because as good as Carlos has been, it's more the tail end
Oh,
of,
this
well, not the
season
tail end. It's the second half of the season that he's shown that
more.
elevated consistency.
Yes.
Um, Whereas George has been rather consistent the whole season. Um, so yeah, I love Carlos actually. Carlos is the reason why I don't absolutely dog on Ferrari every single race. As much as I have respect for Carlos Sainz, for Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz is my preferred driver at Ferrari.
Yeah. No, I can
And
see it.
and speaking of Mr. Charles Leclerc, I put Charles Leclerc in the B tier. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah, I put him at the
At the
first.
at the top of B at the top of B tier, but I don't.
I think he's
It's
over
he's having
reliance.
underwhelming.
He's over
He's
reliance.
having. Yeah, he is. He is. The thing is that he is well aware that the garage doesn't know what they're doing. The strategy wall is terrible, but he still seems to follow the strategy and then he doesn't question it as much as Carlos does. Which, number one, you shouldn't have to, as a driver, be questioning your strategy wall so consistently at every single race. But it's just, it's he's had a very underwhelming season, especially considering the fact that last season he was supposed to be challenging for the title, and we expected a step on from that from this season, and he hasn't even really been in a conversation.
Yeah. No,
I haven't had I don't remember a race weekend where I've sat there and said, Charles the fastest person on track today, or Charles is looking like
a
like
blitzing
he's
driver.
looking exactly. He's not he wasn't looking too impressive this season to me. He's had a rather under the radar season in my opinion.
Yeah, I do agree. I think he's fighting for that leadership in Ferrari, but he's not showing for me that leadership qualities. Like where Carlos, at least he realized, oh, the pit wall is trash at bringing a strategy alive. I'm going to do it myself, and look at the successes that Carlos has brought to himself. I mean, if you just go and look at the standings, I'm pretty sure Carlos is ahead of Sainz. So Carlos is Sainz.
Uh,
It's Charles, right? Albeit six
yeah.
points, but he's still ahead of Charles. And it shows that
Yeah.
Carlos is it. I'm the first driver because he's able to make those decisions for himself, and Charles is just sitting back, being almost the passenger princess at Ferrari, and not doing much
That's a,
more about it.
that's really what it feels like. And the sad reality is that Charles Leclerc is that guy that he's
He's supposed to be
people are
winning
gonna hate me.
races, man.
I think people are gonna hate me for this statement, but I think he's a pole merchant. He's the kind of guy that for one lap he can be the quickest guy on track, but you can also bin it on those one laps or like not put it together. We've seen it multiple times this season where he'll be pushing and then he'll go out, like not I mean go out, but he'll drift over the white line and now he's off track, so that's track violation. So now that time is deleted. We've seen that so many times this season, specifically from him. Not that we haven't seen it from other drivers, but from him going on his fast laps where he's trying to push the envelope and try to get those his next polo or whatever, or get a podium or whatever. But he's
Yeah,
he's got he's just not he's not in my opinion he's not consistent. When he's got these fast laps and he's got these really amazing pole laps, but he's also got just as many didn't get pole, didn't put it all together on the same lap type of thing. So he swings
left and
too
right.
he's like a pendulum. He swings a little too much. He's either amazing on a one lap, or he's just not putting it together on that one lap.
No, I agree. I think we're taking a little too much time on talking about Charles's flaws
Yeah,
here today.
that's
Sergio
true.
Perez. I think I'm putting Sergio
Oh,
in B tier, above
yeah,
Nico and Gasly,
yeah, yeah.
but he's. I don't. I can't put him up in first place for B tier.
No, I
But the
can't.
thing
I
is,
can't add him.
I do feel he's
I think he's better
better
than
than
Charles.
Charles, but
Yeah,
putting him in first place for B tier isn't the right position. But there is no
yeah,
other
it
driver
isn't.
who is there.
Yeah, there's not been another driver that I would put in the B tier that I would say, yeah, that's how I would operate it.
Every driver
And then
above is
obviously,
higher level. I mean, Max
yeah,
Verstappen,
yeah, we're not even gonna we know where he belongs.
he's flawless, flawless drive this year.
Absolutely flawless.
To all his credit, he's done
Yeah.
it. He's doing that drive, and he's breaking records as it stands right now.
Yep.
And I think that's just
And
gonna be
yet,
it until the end of the year.
still, yeah, and yet still might break more records and set records.
And it's pretty good. I think it's good to have him set new records and break previous
Yeah,
records
yeah,
as it
I agree
pushes
with
the
that.
standards forward. So, but that, ladies and gentlemen, is the conclusion of our tier list for the F1 drivers post the break, but still, I want to still call it out mid-season tier list of where we rate all
Yes.
the drivers and essentially why we rate them where we are. We will have this posted onto the YouTube channel so you guys can see under the community tab what our just the overall view of our tier list. But you'll always catch another tier list at the end of the year, post Abu Dhabi, where we will then make a full-on tier list to say what is our full rating for all the drivers by the end of the year. I think
Indeed, and we'll also be doing a winners and losers of the season at the end of the season after Abu Dhabi.
I definitely will be. So, this has been the Late Breakers podcast. We're going to love and leave you guys here, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Cheers.
Cheers.